So this is something I heard from a friend of a friend, and it's stuck with me ever since. It's about a couple who'd been married close to 13 years. Let's call them Eric and Laura. They lived in a quiet suburb outside Chicago. Had 2 kids. Both worked. She in education, he in software. From the outside, they looked like your average upper-middle-class family. PTA meetings, summer vacations, new patio furniture every couple of years. You know the type. Predictable. Stable. Boring in the way some people find comforting. Eric had a job that required him to work in the city once a week. Every Wednesday, he'd drive into Chicago, spend the day at the office, and get back home around 9 or 10 p.m. It was part of his routine for the last few years. Nobody questioned it. Laura had her own rhythm at home with the kids, and Wednesday nights were her quiet evenings. She'd read, catch up on grading papers, or watch those historical dramas he always found boring. They both had built-in space from each other, without ever talking about it. Their routine worked, or so they thought. But routines can be dangerous. They let things hide. Then one Wednesday, he forgot his laptop. Not just forgot it, left it charging on the kitchen counter. Laura noticed it half an hour after he left. At first, she thought about calling him, but then figured she could just drive into the city later in the day and drop it off at his office. She texted him to let him know. No response. 2 hours passed. Still nothing. She refreshed her texts again and again, trying not to let her imagination get ahead of her. She assumed he was just in a meeting, maybe traffic, but something about it itched. When she got to the company address he had always listed, the receptionist looked confused. Said Eric didn't work out of that building. Not anymore. Hadn't in over a year. Laura just stood there holding his laptop bag, trying to make sense of it. She even double-checked the address in their texts. Same one. That's when her stomach dropped. She smiled, nodded politely, and left. Sat in the car for 20 minutes, just staring at the dashboard. That night, she didn't say anything. He came home like always, talked about traffic on the Kennedy, some problem with the data migration. She nodded along, acted normal, but she didn't sleep much. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, running through every possible explanation. A project he didn't mention? A misunderstanding? A cover-up? Maybe the building was under renovation, or maybe the receptionist was new. Anything, but it all felt wrong. The next Wednesday, she followed him. She tailed his car for over 40 minutes until he pulled into a residential neighborhood, not an office park. Older buildings, quiet streets. She parked at a distance, waited. Saw him unlock the door to a first-floor apartment and go inside. Curtains drawn. No signage, just a normal apartment. A light turned on in the back, and then everything went still. The feeling she had watching that was worse than anything she imagined. It wasn't dramatic. It was eerily mundane. She waited in her car for 2 hours, then drove home. Her heart thudded the entire way back. She couldn't concentrate for the rest of the night. Every plate she moved, every cabinet she closed seemed to echo louder than usual. The kids noticed she was distracted. She said she had a headache. For the next 3 Wednesdays, she did the same. He always went there, alone, stayed for hours, then drove home, same as usual. No one else ever entered or left. No sign of another woman, no strange deliveries, no hint of anything scandalous. But he was definitely living another life in that place. And every week she grew more obsessed with the mystery of what exactly was happening behind those walls. She began to think about it even on other days, wondering what he was doing there, who he was there. She tried to act normal around him but found herself watching him more closely. The way he smiled at dinner, the clothes he chose, what shows he said he liked. She started questioning everything she thought she knew. Not because of a specific lie, but because she no longer knew what was true. Their whole life together started to feel like a carefully rehearsed play. Eventually she got brave, or maybe just tired, and used the spare key she found in his nightstand. She waited until he left for the day, then drove out there and let herself in. She was terrified, not of what she might find, but of what it would mean to see it. Her hands shook when she turned the key. Her breath caught when the door swung open. It wasn't what she expected. The apartment wasn't romantic or shady or particularly secretive. It was clean, tidy, lived in. But what hit her hardest was how different it was from their house. Muted colors, bookshelves full of novels he'd never mentioned. Photos, not of people, but landscapes, old buildings, train stations. A kettle on the stove. A vinyl player humming faintly in the corner. Slippers neatly arranged near the front door. A clock ticking quietly on the wall. Everything felt curated, personal, intentional. She'd never seen him drink tea before, or play vinyl. The refrigerator had food in it. Fresh milk, eggs, even a carton of berries. The trash can wasn't empty. The bed was made. There were receipts in the drawer from a nearby coffee shop. It wasn't just a place he visited. It was a place he inhabited. She stood in the middle of the living room, trying to understand how this person, her husband, had an entire existence she knew nothing about. It wasn't betrayal in the usual sense. It was like discovering a twin life. It was as if he'd created a version of his life where he wasn't a husband, wasn't a father, wasn't anyone in particular. Just Eric, someone quieter, simpler. Someone who didn't have to explain himself. Someone who got to feel like he existed without expectations tied to every breath. It was a space untouched by their marriage. A place where no one needed anything from him. And then she found the notebooks. 5 of them, stacked neatly in the closet. He wrote in them every Wednesday. Journals, basically. But not about work or home. They were internal, full of questions, fragments of thoughts, long paragraphs where he wrestled with the fact that he felt like a ghost in his real life. He didn't talk about cheating or escape. He talked about existing, about watching himself go through the motions of marriage, parenting, friendship, about missing a version of himself he never really got to be. One line stuck with her. "I don't hate my life. I just don't feel present in it." She read all 5 notebooks that day. Some pages were scribbled in frustration, others written slowly and carefully, as if he were trying to hold on to a version of himself. Some entries mentioned Laura. Not cruelly, just distantly, like someone writing about an old friend they no longer understood. She realized he wasn't trying to leave her. He already had. In pieces. She left the apartment exactly as it was, drove home, and said nothing. But everything looked different now. Her kitchen, the hall mirror, the wedding photo on the mantel. She caught herself staring at the details, wondering what he saw when he looked at them, or if he even looked at them anymore. Weeks passed. She didn't bring it up. But she changed, became a little quieter, a little more private. She started going to bed earlier, taking weekend walks alone. She canceled a trip they were planning for spring break. She picked up a part-time job at a bookstore without telling him at first. He noticed, of course, asked if everything was okay. She always smiled and said yes. But she'd seen something she couldn't unsee, and the silence between them slowly widened. The Wednesday trips continued. She never stopped him, never told anyone. But something between them shifted, not from anger but distance. Like both of them were slowly stepping into rooms the other wasn't invited to. Familiar routines became quieter. Mealtime stretched into long silences. Eye contact became brief. She found herself scrolling rental listings late at night, even if she wasn't ready to move. They still coexisted, but the warmth drained from the everyday moments. She stopped asking how his day went. He stopped asking if she needed anything from the store. The space between them felt carefully maintained, like a mutual agreement not to touch anything too fragile. And eventually the gap became too wide to ignore. A year later they separated. Quietly. No big blow-up, no scandal. Just an agreement. The kind you reach when you both know too much but have nothing left to say. Friends were surprised but not shocked. They'd stopped being curious about each other long before they signed the paperwork. He moved into that apartment full-time, got a different couch, took down the photos of buildings, added a framed picture of the kids, started walking to the same coffee shop each morning. He finally used the balcony he'd ignored before. It became his real home. Whether that was a win or a loss, she couldn't decide. She stayed in the house with the kids. For a while. Eventually she sold it, moved closer to her sister, started over. It wasn't tragic. Just quiet. She never asked if it was what he wanted all along, and he never offered an answer. And that was that. People still ask her sometimes casually why they split. She usually says something vague. We grew apart, or it just wasn't working anymore. But sometimes when she's in the right mood, she says, he had an apartment in the city every Wednesday, and it was the only place he ever really lived. Thank you for listening. Until the next heartbeat in a story. Subscribe and stay for more love in every word.